So, let's turn this on a little bit. So, previous videos involved me showing you guys how I was putting epoxy over threads. A couple, I think one of them showed me actually wrapping threads onto a rod guide. Most of them have to do with me finishing the rod. This time I decided this one's a little bit more technical. This rod's been kind of a, I don't want to say a pain in the ass because of who I'm building it for, and the reason why this one is being built is kind of an important deal. So, we'll just go ahead and cancel that. So, this rod's being built for a gentleman who has a medical condition. It's actually being built for the grandson of the intended owner, I guess. So basically, I'm building it for a guy that I know. He's going to give it to his grandfather. His grandfather, health-wise, isn't doing so well, so I'm trying to build this rod to be able to incorporate some personal touches for the end owner, and also to be able to put in some personal touches to provide a lasting memory for the rod of who will probably end up holding on to it as time goes on, as it does for all of us. So I was approached about this rod, and I was asked by a friend of mine to build it, and he told me everything. He gave me the backstory and everything, and asked me if he said, can you put on some thread wrap, incorporate some colors for college and things like that, and all of this was, you've seen my videos before. If any of you have watched any of my videos in the past, then you've seen I was basically just operating on the turnkey kit that Mudhole had given me in the past. So I was basically using just basic stuff. I had 2 thread colors, no extra epoxy, no experience with decals, no experience with setting any, anything into the rod butt or anything of that matter. So this one really kind of took basically what was becoming pretty standard. Like I felt pretty comfortable just churning out a rod, no big deal. Assembled the rod, the handle, the grip, and everything. Put the rod blank in, boom, you got everything set, and it's it took 15 minutes to go ahead and set a handle and rod and everything, and be done with it. This one basically took that game and brought it up. Like if it was about here, it bumped it up here, and then as I was learning, it took it up another notch. This isn't something that I probably won't do for every single rod that I build. This one's more of a commemorative and specialized rod. I don't know how often it's going to be fished. I don't know how often it's going to be used. It's just one of those things that it's more of a sentimental value, that I think the guy put the money in and trusted me to go ahead and build it. So anyways, with those kind of personal touches and with the sentimental things, I had to get to know the guy. So I had to get to know who he was, what his name was, what he did, and I actually did, by chance, get to meet him, which was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to be able to see the guy that this rod is going to, that his grandson is entrusting me, to build for him. So that was awesome. At the same time, there was a lot of pressure on me to create something that was meaningful. He said that he just wanted, something basic. He didn't want anything super special, but at the same time, he had some things that he had in mind that he wanted me to, incorporate in it. And I wanted to take it up a little, another notch. So here I am. So what I ended up doing was getting a, I'm not going to fully disclose the last name, but I got a decal. Says the guy's first name, grandfather, hero, or mentor, hero. Just getting to know the grandson of this gentleman. It was pretty cool. The way that he talked about him, just briefly, was kind of neat. So I could tell that he was obviously his grandfather, but he was kind of a mentor to him as time went on through his life. And he talked about him with a bit of a heroic stature, almost. So I had 2 lines to be able to put a decal on, and so I put the gentleman's name, and then I decided I was going to go ahead and just kind of commemorate the guy with 3 words, what he meant to his grandson, which is the guy that's paying me to go ahead and build this. So also with that, this gentleman was built. He was born in 1946. So if I can get this in here right, I found, come on, they're pretty tough to find, but I found a 1946 quarter. These quarters are made out of 90% silver. So this fishing rod actually has a value to it. If it's worth nothing, it's worth at least a quarter. And so what I did was, with both of these, I took the decal, I put a base layer of epoxy over the entire cork grip on the front grip, which I was using, and this is something that I'm going to put in the memory banks. So I was using this here to basically use as my building block, if you will. They provide this now at mudhole.com as a standard to all ice rod kits when you buy them, which is awesome because it allows you to go ahead and take said rod. Oh, gotta go down this way. It allows you to take said rod and it's made of carbon fiber, so it's kind of a problem trying to put everything together because you got to saw it off, and when you do that, you get these little flakes because those are the carbon fibers. Which, once it's epoxied all together and everything, won't be an issue. It's not going to ruin the integrity of the fishing rod by any means. Also, and I'm going to get to an imperfection that just happened tonight. Real shitty. Got to try and find a way to hide it as best as I can. I cannot ever run away from this problem. It will always be there. But for the end user, I'm trying to do my best. So this is what it's going to look like when it's all put together. Glossed over. Kind of see how it's been epoxied. That was tough. That was really tough putting all the epoxy on there. It is a nice smooth finish for the most part. There are some tactile imperfections that you can feel as you put your hand on it that's just not quite right. What can I do about it at this point? Not a goddamn thing. It's pretty much set in stone how this rod is. This, when it's all said and done, this fishing rod is going to look, and I can pretty much tell you, it's going to look pretty much like this. So looking down the rod, you have the gentleman's name, which basically allows it to sit upright, because this is where the reel is going to sit downward. And then, so you have it like this, you turn it upside down, the reel is going to sit downward, and boom, you have the head of the quarter sitting straight up, with the gentleman's year birth in it. And a quarter on these rod butts is almost the exact size of the rod butt itself. I'm looking at this actually on the screen, but trying to guide it in here. But as you can see, the quarter is the same size. I mean, if there's any difference, it's minuscule, but it's the same size as the rod butt itself. So there was no reaming out the cork on the butt and setting the quarter in and epoxying it with the 2-part hard epoxy and then actually putting this on there. That wasn't going to happen ever. So basically what I ended up doing was I epoxied over the butt, I roughed it up with some sandpaper, and then I put the hard epoxy on it, set the quarter on it, I stood it up like this for an entire night, let it dry. It wasn't moving, it set perfectly. It's all, I mean, you can't hardly even tell that it's off by any means. It's almost perfect. And then what I did is I went ahead and put a second coat of slow drying epoxy over the handle and then over the grip, or over the rod butt, which gave it a really nice depth to it, which is really cool. It almost looks like I don't want to say 3D, because I mean it is technically 3D, but it almost gives it a little bit more depth to it. So that was pretty cool. The biggest problem was, and this video is getting long, and I have to get this rod set into this sheath here pretty soon. The biggest problem was when I was building it, what I ended up having to do, and you'll see this, and I'll show this to you right now, because I'm not afraid of showing my mistakes. It's kind of tough, but you can see how there is a big giant groove missing out of this. And the reason why, and I'll show you, I disassembled the whole rod basically. The reason why that is there is because in order to, if this was down the center of the actual handle itself, the reason why that missing chunk of cork is there is because in order to be able to turn that handle, I had to build it on this. So basically this is going to be what is in the handle of itself. I put everything over it, and then I epoxied over it. So this piece here that's missing a bunch of cork and kind of looks like shit, I'm gonna have to try and figure that out. I have a few ideas. You might not ever know. I put all that on this, slid it down this. This sits inside the actual rod drying mechanism, spins at 9 RPMs, and I built it all on that. You can see, as I turn it, where the epoxy was. Boom, right there. So some of the epoxy spilled over off of the cork and onto this sheath, causing it to affix itself to the cork of the front rod grip. Obviously, I had to get it off because it wasn't measured, and that was not a result that I was expecting. So I did what I could to try and take a razor blade and cut the epoxy off around it, which I got most of it, but I ended up losing that piece right there, which obviously it's not supposed to look like that, and a winding check is not ever going to be big enough to be able to cover a problem like that. So what I'm going to have to do is take another rod blank and remount some cork. After I set that, I'm going to have to take the cork dust and pack it in and then epoxy over it so that I don't have a problem with it looking like crap towards the end. It's a long process. Every single piece of this rod is a long process. It is a fun process. It's a lot of fun. But it's part of learning. And if I wasn't learning anything doing this, then I wouldn't be having fun, and I wouldn't be making videos drinking beer at 11 o'clock at night when I probably should be going to bed here pretty soon. But it is kind of a passion, and it is starting to grow on me. Especially when you have a rod that you're building for someone that has a lot of meaning behind it. So I'm hoping that this rod turns out as good as I have intended. This front rod grip is going to be a bit of a bugaboo, but we'll figure it out. So thank you for tuning in again, or for the first time. I hope I can show another video of a really cool completed rod, because this one, if it turns out the way I have in my mind, it's gonna be something I'm proud of. So have a good night. Thanks for watching. Bye.